Hello, everyone. In our world, religion has made a very complicated affair of spirituality. And our science, which doesn't recognize consciousness, ignores the soul. And the truth can only be known in the soul. And the soul can only be known through the heart. So I'm going to tell you a living creation story that's come from Archangel Michael. And in this we can participate together because it's all built around circles. And when we have a circle of heart, then we have a family, we have a community, we have a tribe, we have humanity. But the spiritual beings that are all around us, that look after us, they're our family as well. So I'm going to introduce you to the family. So imagine before this universe was created, and then before you is a circle, and this is the circle of God's heart. And then see that circle. The top portion of the circle break away from the rest. And the breaking of the way was the birth of Josias. So the Son was born from God, the same substance of the Father. And then where the tear happened, electricity came forth as the overabundance of God. So see where the tear happened and the edges fell back, and it forms the shape of our hearts. Now Josias was born, and he is the ray of life and love. And from Josias came the other rays. Now these rays are headed by an adept, and each ray has its own solar plane where the rays are given out to the world. And in the center of these rays is the solar logos. And the solar logos is the being that interfaces with God and interfaces with the solar lords. So God gives his command to the solar logos, then to the adepts, and then from the solar planes, the energy is given out to the universe, to the planets, and to us as humans. So these 12 rays are not rays out there, but they are actually the energies within us that give us the qualities of being human. To have a living body, for Mother Nature to be what she is. These rays create everything. Now, here are the 13 rays. There were 12 rays before. And in 1940, the World War I had just finished, and the light had won over the dark on a higher level. And the creative ray, which is the golden ray, there was a sub-ray called the ray of sound. And the adept of that ray rose up to challenge the Lord of Darkness. And there was a 3-day standoff of wills. And yet the Lord of Darkness had to withdraw. And as a result, that lesser ray was made into a major ray. So there are now 13 rays since that time. Now it's the ray of sound, which is not about music or anything, but is about being able to create a wall of silence against the noise of the world. Because of all the bombs and all the industrialization, this creates a wall of sound that allows you to go into the silence and then hear the voice of God inside. And as this ray comes to work more and more, we'll be able to hear the nature kingdoms. We'll be able to hear the earth sing. So if you come inside of your heart, at the top here is where the heartbeat comes. And it's the same electricity in your heartbeat that came from the birth of Josiah in the heavens. And in your left ventricle of your heart is the circlet of your soul. It's where your soul connects with your body. Now, when you go into the heart, you're also going into the inner realms of God, so to speak. Because God has many facets or personalities. So when you go inside of that, then you go into the Christ realms. So although I put them around the outside, I'm showing that they are greater energies than the others. And then the first of the Christ realm is the I Am. And then the Great Spirit. And then the ultimate is the universal Great White Spirit, who in physical form you might say is the Holy Spirit. So you see that this is all our family, because everyone is a brother or sisterhood. There are no gods up there, that everyone comes down with love and light. So tonight we're interested in certain rays. There's the silver ray there, which is Josiah's silver ray of love and light, which is present in all of us. Otherwise we wouldn't be alive. And then the scarlet ray here is the ray of mysticism, which allows you to get the word of God. It acts on the pineal gland, whereby the ray will give impressions and visions. And this ray is forever seeking out those who are seeking the truth. And then we have the ray of perfume. Now this ray is, the adept of this ray is Lord Ahura. And we're going to have a story after this about Lord Ahura, because Lord Ahura is very close to us here in Britain, of which you'll find out why. And then we have the ray of Michael. So Michael is about the law of the world. And he is very intertwined with Josiah, because where there is love, there is always the law. If there is no law, there's no love. So now I'm going to tell a story which fills in our history and gives us a picture of what the essence of spirituality here is in Glastonbury. We go back to 750 BC. The whole world had fallen into doing blood sacrifices. It had succumbed to the dark. And 300 years before that, we know from the Bible that the Jews, although they had God as their king, they wanted kings like other kings. They wanted a petty king. And God said to them, well, if you have another king that is not me, then eventually you will become slaves. But the people insisted. They wanted a king, so they chose to have a king. And the kingdom of Israel rose up to height in Solomon's temple. But then by 750 BC, they too were doing sacrifices and sacrificing their children. So, up in the heavens, God put out the command to save the earth and to bring love and light back to the earth. So, Lord Ahura, the ray of perfume, he came to earth to prepare the way for Josiah. This is Tintagel, or Tintagara Island. He manifested as a 24-year-old man on Tintagara Island. And although the people didn't really know where he came from, eventually they managed to see that he had love, and they accepted him there. And eventually people came to teach about this ray of love that he had. And over time, a monastery grew up on this island. And then later, with the people of Cornwall, they built a temple at a place called Temple. And they used to give out the teachings there on 3 different levels. There was the teachings of the rays, and particularly the teaching of his own ray, which the ray of perfume in ourselves gives us gentle character and a refined being. And then there were those that would take those teachings and they would learn about, in those times, the value of women. Because when we're all into sacrificing and warring, then the women are always cut out of the question. So, and then for the third people, they would know that actually God does exist, and that was enough for them. So after 48 years, a man called Alfred had come from Glastonbury to visit. Now he was called by other people Ara the Good. So Alfred came to visit Ara the Good, and he told him about this place here. So Ara asked if he could travel back with them, and they traveled back to Glastonbury. So he was talking about Chalice Hill. So Ara knew that when he arrived here that his job had been done. But he despaired at the lack of love of the people. And he prayed incessantly for them. And eventually, Archangel Michael came to him. And he says, well, we hear your prayers, Ahura, and we have a gift for you. And then suddenly there was a bright light. And out of that light came Josiah and Francella, the angel. And they were holding the Grail, and they handed it to Ara. Now he held the Grail there for days, meditating on it, until eventually Francella came and asked him to bury it. So he buried it deep within the hill. But as he was laying there, he was shown a vision of how it was created. So he saw Josiah holding a manifest portion of the ray of light and love, a manifest portion of universal love. And then he saw Josiah breathe his love within it, turning the heart of it a rose color. And then all the other ray lords breathed their essence into it. And then it was formed into a beauteous bowl. And this bowl was brought to earth, given to Ara and buried in Chalice Hill. Now, after this happened, one day, Josias came to Ara and he said, well, you've done a good job. You've set the way for me, but it's now time to go. So Ara went with Alfric up onto the hill. And for the first time, he disclosed his real nature as a solar lord to Alfric. And then there was a bright light, and all his atoms were assimilated back into the higher self again. And he disappeared. So from that time through to the coming of Josias, monasteries popped up all around in Cornwall, as far as Ireland, and with the ships going up into the north, and even over to the Americas. And there was a lively spiritual, pre-Christian spirituality in a contrast to the sacrifices that went before. So when Josias was born, he came here with Joseph the Arimathean, and he was looked after by his sister. So he came here, he was only 12. And in that time, he became aware of his later mission. He also, with Joseph, built the Wattle and Daub Church. So then he stayed here for 2 years. Then he went back and he went to study with the Essenes. And then he went to Egypt, and he returned here again when he was 18. But this time he came alone. And the story is that he was walking on the woods, by the woods, at the base of Chalice Hill one day, and he heard Michael's voice saying, "You are near to where the spot is for the Grail." And there was a boulder, and he had to move the boulder away, and under it was the spring gushing there. So he raised his arms to God, and he prayed to be given a manifest portion of his ray of life and love, that it would bring healing to the earth and to the people. And then he plunged into the well, and sweet music was heard. So he activated the Grail. He then went back and waited for his final mission. When King Arthur was born, he was born at Tintagel. He was an incarnation of Ara, in his higher solar self being Lord Ahura. So King Arthur wasn't an ordinary man. He embodied the ray of perfume. And at the time, all those monasteries, all that teaching had survived through the Roman times up until the time of Arthur. And so he defended this country against those dark forces that would wish to destroy the Grail. And although he died in that last battle, the light won against the dark. So now in Glastonbury, we behold a very sacred object which we could never see. or we could never get near. For the Grail, although it is physical light. And it took a solar lord coming down to earth in order to be able to hold it and then bury it. And it was buried here to save Mother Earth. And that Grail resonates in the whole universe. For when it's active, it propels the darkness back to the void. And eventually the Grail will bring love and light back to this universe. Now we can't seek the Grail, but when we open our hearts, it seeks us. So the more we become aware of it, the more we can connect with it. The more it becomes active, and the more it propels the evil of this world back.